On this 14th day of Advent, what would have been December 12th, also the feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, who appears to a poor peasant in Mexico. And she says to him, Juanito Dieguito, little Johnny, asked the bishop that I'd like a chapel built here in my honor. And to convince the bishop that she is truly appearing to Juan Diego and that she is the Mother of God, she tells Juan Diego to take roses found at the very top of Tepeyac Hill, and she will place them in his tilma, his very poor and rugged cloak. And when he goes to the bishop's office, he opens wide his tilma, and the roses spill out, and there's such a fragrance of loveliness in the bishop's office. And the bishop is surprised for two reasons. One, he's surprised because the roses that he sees and smells before him in abundance have not only grown and blossomed beautifully and fragrantly in the dead of winter, but also because these particular roses do not exist in Latin America. They exist in the bishop's native Spain. So, first sign, roses in winter in Mexico, Spanish roses in Mexico that had not been brought over from Spain to Mexico at all. Second surprise, he sees the beautiful image of Our Lady on Juan Diego's tilma, this stunning icon of Mary, painted by the hand of God, striking and stunning with color that is literally unearthly. Scientists in examining this painting have not only realized that it hovers above the fabric, they've also realized that the colors and the composition of it are materials that have not been found yet on Earth. The magic, no, not the magic, the mystery, the grace of God in giving us such a wonder, such a miracle, such a gift. We're reminded that all this is made possible because of God's design for salvation history. Mary and Joseph are both of the line of David. And from Mary comes Jesus. And so, my dear friends in Christ, we'll hear today that David is crowned king. He who begins this line, this promised covenant line of God, that culminates in Jesus the Christ, who is the King of Kings. We hear in 2 Samuel chapter 5, verses 1 through 5, that David is crowned king. Let's listen. All the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and said, Behold, we are your bone and flesh. In times past, when Saul was king over us, it was you that led us and brought in, it was you that led out and brought in Israel. And the Lord said to you, You shall be shepherd of my people Israel, and you shall be prince over Israel. So all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. At Hebron, he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and at Jerusalem, he reigned over all Israel and Judah 33 years. What does David do? David, in being upright, unites the two kingdoms of the Jews that had split, Israel and Judah. 10 tribes in Israel, 2 tribes in Judah. He unites them all so that they might be one house of God, that they might be complete and reunited. 12 tribes united, no longer divided, but now one, as God himself had made them. 2. How many years is it that David reigns? 40 years. How many years do the Israelites, God's chosen people, wander in the desert? 40 years. How many years will Jesus, the King of, or how many days will Jesus, the King of Kings, fast in the desert? 40. We see this very symbolic, powerfully symbolic number repeated so very often in sacred scripture. But most particularly, 40 years that David reigns and 40 years that the Israelites are wandering in the desert, at the end of which they have a home. They are brought into the promised land. At the end of David's reign, when Solomon, his son, will begin to reign. Solomon, as we'll hear in the next installment of the Jesse Tree, will build a home for God, a promised home too for the Jews, where they could all come to worship. He will build the temple. You and I, saints in the making, we are called too to go to the temple and there honor and worship and adore the one who is crowned king in the line of David, Jesus Christ. So as you and I hang this next ornament on our Jesse tree, let us be grateful that the King of Kings has chosen us to be members of his royal family through baptism. The only way that that could ever be fulfilled is if you and I make space for grace.